Well, joining me right now is Washington Congressman Adam Smith, the Democratic ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, and a good friend to us. Welcome back, sir. Good to see you. So how strong a sign is the level of bipartisanship in the votes? Does it at all lay the groundwork for future efforts? I mean, how much credit do both President Biden and Speaker McCarthy get for this?
No, I think it is a very positive sign. I mean, one of my biggest worries when the Republicans took over the Congress was, the House, I should say, was the divided government between the White House and the House, and the undue influence of the far-right Republicans would make it difficult for us to just basically function, to pass a budget, to avoid a government shutdown or a continuing resolution, or even perhaps avoid default. And this agreement avoided default and puts us on path to pass the appropriations bills, fund the government, and go forward in a normal process. So it's an incredibly positive sign, and a great credit to President Biden. I mean, he said when he ran for office that he was going to work with whoever he had to work with to get things done. And over 2+ years, he's proven that. I frankly didn't think he was going to be able to get this agreement done, and he did. And
really?
It's a huge
you didn't think he was going to be able to get this done?
Well, here's what I doubted. No, and I told people this, and I was wrong, okay, and I'm happy to be wrong. But I didn't think that Speaker McCarthy would give this much. I didn't. I thought that he would feel like he was controlled by the far right. Look, I mean, the vote in the Rules Committee was 7-6, and one of the far right people, Congressman Massey, voted with McCarthy. The other two didn't. If all three hadn't voted with McCarthy, then this thing goes down because of the deal that Speaker McCarthy had to cut to become Speaker in the first place. How much influence would Chip Roy have over this process? He came that close to having enough to torpedo the whole thing. So, yes, I doubted Speaker McCarthy's ability to do that.
So, okay, so that's the GOP side. On the flip side, what about the fellow House Democrats who voted against the bill? Do you understand their positions?
No, I understand it. I disagree with it. But look, the impediment to getting a deal done was always going to be the majority. That's why I was focused on that. You know, the speaker gets to decide what comes up for a vote in the House, not the minority party. So that's what had me worried.
Is there a way for Democrats to recoup at all what they might have lost in the compromise?
Some parts of it. I mean, look, the one piece in the compromise that I didn't particularly like was the permitting reform. It doesn't do enough to help with the transmission needs. I didn't support approving that Mountain Valley pipeline. But on the money side, we'll see. I mean, the other aspect of this is it's not really binding. I mean, the appropriations committees will go in and they will determine how much to spend in the discretionary budget for FY24. And if they want to go off of this agreement, we've heard people and Senators Hawks in the Republican Party talk about upping the defense numbers. So we're still going to have to fight that battle. So it's not over yet. But by and large, I think this is the parameters for what we're going to spend in the next 2 years, next 2 budget cycles.
Right. So after the Chinese, as we switch gears here, initially declined an invitation to meet with Defense Secretary Austin in Singapore, the counterparts have actually now briefly spoken, a spokesperson saying the two leaders, they shook hands, but there was no substantive exchange there. But it comes, as you know, after a Chinese fighter jet flew directly in front of the nose of a U.S. reconnaissance plane in international territory over the South China Sea. It happened last weekend. Secretary Austin addressing it while in Japan earlier.
The provocative intercepts of our aircraft and also our allies' aircraft, that's very concerning, and we would hope that they would alter their actions. But since they haven't yet, I'm concerned about at some point having an incident that could very, very quickly spiral out of control.
How about you? How concerned are you about a possible incident and about where communications and relations are with China right now?
I'm very concerned about it. Look, China is a global power. They are a global economic power. They are a rising global military power, and they're not acting like one. They're acting like a bully trying to push their way around the world. They're not talking with us. They're doing things like buzzing our aircraft for no good reason. And that worries me. Look, I mean, China, as I said, they're a global power. We're going to have to deal with them. We're going to have to work with them. And I am absolutely confident that the world is big enough for the both of us. But right now, they're stiff-arming us. They won't even have these basic conversations. I forget if it was President Biden or Jake Sullivan who said yesterday about the nuclear arms race. We need to be talking about arms control with China. They are refusing to have that dialogue.
Yeah.
We need to talk. We have certainly differences of opinion on a wide range of issues and potential places of conflict. We need to discuss those so we avoid stumbling into an actual conflict, and China's refusing to do that, and that's a big problem.
Completely legitimizes your concerns right there. Let me ask you, sir, before we let you go, about the book that you published this week. It is called, for all of you, Lost and Broken: My Journey Back from Chronic Pain and Crippling Anxiety. Talk about a challenge for you to endure. And I have to say, you've always been so gracious. Come on our show every time we ask. Had no idea you were dealing with this. What's the message you want readers to take away from your book?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I went through a very deep anxiety problem that started in 2013 and lasted about 6 years. At the same time, I had 3 hip surgeries. I had chronic pain. I had to go to a whole bunch of doctors and providers to try to figure this out. Message is, number one, our healthcare system needs to work better for people. It's very difficult to find your correct diagnosis and correct treatment, particularly on mental health. Second, there is still a stigma against mental health. It's getting better. A lot of people have talked about it. It's becoming more of an open conversation. But a lot of people don't seek treatment because they're concerned that if people know they have a mental health problem, they won't be able to keep their job or keep relationships that they have. We need to reduce that stigma. And lastly, as difficult as my journey was, and I made mistakes along the way. I wasn't necessarily smart about how I sought out help. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I'd never, experiencing that level of anxiety. I took too many medications too quickly. I bounced around from one provider to the next. But the big message is there is help out there. Yeah. Certainly for mental health issues, for anxiety, for depression, you can find help and you can get better. You can learn better how your mind works. So seek that help, be open and honest about it, and things can get better. And I want to tell my story to help, hopefully, other people, realize that they can pursue those options to get better.
I'm so glad you've written this book. A for effort. Thank you for putting it out there with such candor and honesty. I appreciate it, Representative Adams.